Let her in, Nanny.
Anita, darling.
How are you?
Miserable, darling, as usual, perfectly wretched.
If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will indeed. Cruella de Vil is one of the rare Disney villains that ended up becoming the most popular part of her respective movie. However, what truly makes Cruella stand out as one of the most notorious Disney villains is that, unlike Maleficent, Ursula, or the Evil Queen, her evilness does not come from magic or supernatural forces. She's a more realistic and down-to-earth kind of villain that is fueled by absolute madness. Even without any Disney elements, Cruella earned the title of being a timeless Disney villain thanks to her larger-than-life personality and the crazy lengths that she would go to in the name of fashion, such as killing 101 Dalmatians in order to take their skins and turn them into a fur coat. Now, of course, some may say that she may be a bit exaggerated as a person, considering that they did portray her as a literal puppy-killing crazy lady. But then again, for the kind of movie that she's in, which is a Disney animated film, she actually fits in perfectly, thus making her one of the most recognized villains in the Disney universe, and also one of the most beloved in a way. And with a title like that, it's pretty much inevitable that Disney would go and make an entire movie for her. Let's be real, of course Disney would make a Cruella movie. Considering that Disney is still in their phase of capitalizing on their classic animated films by turning them into big-budgeted live-action blockbuster remakes, it was only a matter of time that they would make one for 101 Dalmatians, especially after the major success of Maleficent by putting the villain center stage. And since they weren't able to make lightning strike twice with that movie, why not go and find some fresh material and use the next best thing with Disney's other prominent villainess? I know that some people might immediately point out that the idea of making a live-action 101 Dalmatians alone is entirely pointless. But to be fair, what Disney live-action remake isn't pointless? What I mean is that some argue that there is no need for this since Disney already made a live-action remake of 101 Dalmatians many years before they started the trend back in 1996, featuring Glenn Close as the devilish fashionista.
I'll be wearing Anita's dogs.
Also, that film became a major success that it even got a sequel, and put 101 Dalmatians' popularity back in the mainstream that resulted in the animated series. And that's gonna be the biggest challenge for this Cruella movie, to justify its existence. Sure, there are some ways that it is doing in order to make itself stand out more from the other Disney adaptations they did to this story, such as having this be a prequel to 101 Dalmatians and change up the settings to have this be this 1970s British punk rock era. You know, to give that element in order to spice things up and really have it be a lot more about Cruella. However, it still has one question that many people will have that Disney must answer to justify Cruella's existence. What's the point of having Emma Stone when we already have Glenn Close completely losing her mind? You really think anyone could top that? Now, I don't blame anyone if they look at this movie and all they see is nothing but this Maleficent-style cash grab, because, let's be honest, that is kind of its main purpose. But upon actually watching this movie, is there more to Cruella's origins that tells us how she actually became Disney's most insane villain? Well, you know how there are people out there who have often compared this movie to Joker? Most of those comments are from those who have only either heard of the concept of this movie, or at the most, have only seen the trailer. In actuality, those comparisons are not inaccurate. Now, I will be entering into some spoiler territory, and if you don't want to know what happened because you haven't seen it yet, then I recommend skipping to here and you'll be fine. Okay, regarding Cruella's origins, Yes, comparing this to something like Joker or Batman is actually fair because the key elements to Cruella ultimately going mad is moments in her life that share striking resemblance to those two. She got that Batman side where, in her youth, she witnessed her mother dying because she was pushed off a cliff by some Dalmatians. I wish I was making that up, but hey, guess you gotta make the Dalmatians look bad in your Cruella-themed vigilante movie. And if that wasn't enough, the mom who died wasn't even her real mother. Yep, they gotta add that extra joker by unexpectedly revealing that the villainous Emma Thompson turns out to be Cruella's actual mother, thus explaining her more rebellious attitude and excellent fashion sense. I'll say this now that it's the one time this movie was unexpected, but it's with the most ludicrous plot twist the movie could think up and barely gives any warning that this is the direction it's going. To sum up, those are just a few examples of how crazy this movie can be. And yet, considering how this is supposed to explain how Cruella became who we know her as now, it kinda does have to have this expect the unexpected attitude, cranking up the tone's insanity to 11 and showing how she's not afraid to take things too far in the name of destroying the competition. And to its credit, there are times when the craziness can work in its favor, like supplying some memorable action scenes that involves chases and heists meant to take down the Baroness, but there are moments when the movie does take it to the extreme where it becomes too ridiculous for its own good. Like, it often sways between being threateningly crazy in the style of a mad genius and so over the top that it can be quite hard to take the film seriously in any capacity. It doesn't help either when the story and the writing is the movie's weakest asset. Looking past all the Disney elements, this is just the typical underdog story. Get it, 'cause it's about Cruella de Vil! Where the lead has to fight fire with fire in order to take down the tyrannical master of their domain. Sure, there are a few wacky surprises in store, but for the most part, it's quite predictable in the way where it's easy to correctly guess the outcome of the scene scenarios and often depend on cliches to progress the story.
From the very beginning, I realized I saw the world differently than everyone else. That didn't sit well with some people.
There is also another issue I have with the writing, and honestly, it actually has to do with the core concept of this whole feature. It's the fact that it's based on 101 Dalmatians. I'm not trying to say that this is automatically bad because it's a Disney live-action remake. It's just that in this case, it's noticeable how its association to the 1961 film is a low priority. Of course, it is expected that it would take some creative liberties and that some plot points don't match up with what Walt and his team did 60 years ago. But it feels like the movie started out as its own original feature, but then Disney had to alter the script to give it some familiar elements to make it easier to connect with. Sure, some of their roles do play a factor in the movie, but did they have to shoehorn in Roger and Anita, or explain how Cruella got her car, or grow a hatred for Dalmatians? I mean, it didn't even bother explaining how she got her hair, so why even bother to connect this with a Disney classic?
She stole my dogs.
I know that it's odd to go after this movie because of its connection to 101 Dalmatians, because, let's be honest, that is the main purpose of the movie's narrative, but I can't help but feel like that is a big part to the movie's biggest problem. It's the fact that it tries so hard to connect itself with a piece of Disney iconography, yet they all feel a bit out of place for the kind of feature that this film wants to actually be. I think it is safe to say that in terms of what this movie and the Disney animated classic wants to try to be, there is a massive difference. But if I could explain what is the biggest reason why I have an issue with this, what is my biggest problem with all these references and connections to 101 Dalmatians, it's that I feel like without them, this would actually be a really good movie. Yes, believe it or not, despite having the label of a Disney live-action remake, Cruella has a lot of the right materials to make a very solid feature. One thing that was to be expected as a strength is regarding the costume designs. I mean, Cruella is all about fashion, so that will play a significant role in the movie. As it turns out, not only are the costumes great, especially with the battle of the Baroness's traditionalism versus Cruella's contemporary commentary, but the entire production design makes the whole movie look extravagant to watch. Okay, maybe not everything looks great because the dogs do turn into hilariously bad CGI at times, but the movie approaches its visual style in the same way as a fashion designer by presenting this 1970s London look with some smart use of colors to go beyond the clothes to present the brawl of Cruella and the Baroness, and how it is a lot more than just for the title of the best fashion icon.
Just call me Cruella de Vil. Call me crazy, call me insane, but you're stuck in the past.
Also, even if they don't try to be like their animated counterparts, the actors did a very good job in this. In fact, I'd even say that they're actually good because they're not like their past versions. This is definitely the case with Emma Stone as Cruella, turning the Disney villain into a master rebel who can only get things go her way by breaking the rules and dare to challenge those already on top to make the biggest impact. But she's not alone in this endeavor. Along with a fashion shop owner whom Disney is proud to present as their first gay character in a movie, again, she is joined by her two lifelong friends, Horace and Jasper, played by Paul Walter Hauser and Joel Fry respectively. Technically, it sounds weird for the movie to try to give itself an emotional core with the relationship between DeVille and her lackeys, but in practice, it actually strangely works. Not only do the two provide some little enjoyable comedy and be the ones grounded in reality to say when she's taking things too far, but they also supply some heart to present how they are a family. Sure, they mostly steal their way through life, but they always look out for each other and their plans are only at their best when they work together.
Well, here's hoping there's a plan C.
Right, what's plan C?
Well, what I'm saying is there a plan C?
Get it.
And then there's the Baroness, played by Emma Thompson. At first, it would seem like she's playing the same tough woman who gives everyone a hard time like she greatly did in Saving Mr. Banks. But actually, she's just as crazy as Cruella is. The only difference between her and DeVille is her own selfishness. But the rest is all the same insanity. Not caring about how far she'll push it or what it takes to maintain her status. She is the queen of fashion and she knows it. And that's what kind of makes the film enjoyable to watch. It's the battle between two mad women of power in the fashion world where one is the reigning champion and the other is the rising star as they both go to crazy extremes to the point of trying to kill each other in order to be titled as the true genius.
I want to make trouble. You in?
I do love trouble.
Normally, when I would do these reviews and I would call the movie a mixed bag, that would mean that I find that the feature would have an equal amount of good and bad elements into it, which would ultimately put the feature right down in the middle where I would say that it's around average. Like, at best it would be decent, and at worst it would be mediocre. However, for the first time, this one actually has another component mixed in with all the good and the bad stuff. And funny enough, this one actually overshadows it in terms of having a lot more of that than just the good and bad stuff in general. Because in this bag right here, you got some enjoyable moments, you got some weak aspects, and you got a whole lot of elements that are just insane. If there is one thing this movie did best in terms of remaking 101 Dalmatians, it's perfectly capturing Cruella's insanity. Not just for the character herself, but for the entire picture. You come in thinking you'd watch the origins of a Disney villain, but you end up in a wild ride where you never know what to expect next. No surprise, however, that it is far from the leagues of its animated counterpart, or debatably, even the 1996 live-action version. Due to its weak and predictable story and how it sometimes forces itself to reference 101 Dalmatians, But its strengths do manage to outweigh its problems a bit thanks to its stunning visuals and costumes and the great acting from the cast, resulting in Cruella to technically count as one of the better Disney live-action remakes. If you do have an interest in seeing this film, then I honestly recommend to try not thinking of its connection to the Disney classic. As I said before, when you see this less as a Disney remake and more as its own thing, it makes it easier to appreciate what it's trying to do. If I gotta give this a rating, I'll go with a 7 out of 10. Not a great feature, of course, but still an achievement by Disney remake standards. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of debates on this in the future, but considering that this was conceived to be the next Maleficent, I feel like Cruella ended up becoming so much better than its spiritual predecessor. Sure, this may not have as strong of a Disney connection as much as that Sleeping Beauty remake, but what it lacks in that, it more than makes up for it for having an original idea that it knows that it wants to be and really moves forward with it, along with having an amazing cast that did an incredible job with their performances in which they were committed to make this idea as strong as it could possibly be. Again, I'm sure that we will see a lot of discussions about this amongst Disney fans and film fans, but if they ever do surface, then consider me to be a part of Team Cruella. And I cannot believe that I said that about some crazy lady that wants to kill puppies in order to turn them into a fur coat. See you later, dudes!
Don't worry, there's lots more bad things coming.